Good morning and welcome to the Education and Training Career Choice Virtual Panel Discussion. Today, you will be hearing from professionals in the field and have an opportunity to ask them questions. We hope these discussions will give you insight into the field and help you make informed choices about the careers that you are thinking about pursuing and the pathways you should consider to get there. Before we begin, here are a few webinar tips to share. To interact with the panelists and moderator, submit a question through the Q&A feature found in the controls at the bottom of your screen. You can submit a question anonymously if you would like, but if you include your name in the submission, we'll give you a shout out before your question. You cannot interact with other attendees through the webinar. The chat feature has been disabled and only our staff members can view your questions that are submitted through the Q&A. Students participating in the full panel discussion today will be entered into a $50 Visa gift card drawing. If you are participating as a whole class, don't worry, we'll be reaching out to your teacher for a full list of student names. If you need technical assistance, you can call the help desk at 434-766-6772. And now, without any further delay, I would like to turn things over to the discussion's moderator, Mr. Joe Lee.
Good morning and welcome everybody. My name's Joe Lee and I'm currently a counselor at Gretna High School here in Pittsylvania County. Today I'm fortunate to have four panelists. We have Shep Critzer from Charlotte County Public Schools. We have Traci Daniel from Danville Community College, Early Childhood Program. Brian Taube from Averett University and Lisa Tuite from Pittsylvania County Library. And before we get to the questions, I'll let each of them introduce themselves and maybe tell a little bit about them. And so Shep, we'll start with you.
Good morning, my name is Shep Critzer. I'm Director of Student Services for Charlotte County Schools. I started my career as a teacher. I was an English and a mathematics teacher and a coach for 13 years before I went into administration. I've been an assistant principal, an athletic director, and a principal in addition to being director of student services. In my role as director of student services, I know that all of you kind of have a pretty good idea of what building administrators do and what teachers do, because you see that every day. The role of director of student services is more of a support role. So what we do is we try to do the behind the scenes things, the planning, the preparation, that helps create the environment and provide the raw materials and essential needs for teachers and administrators to do their jobs and create the programs that you see every day.
Thank you. Traci?
Hi, I'm Traci Daniel and I teach early childhood education at DCC. I started my career in early childhood just wanting to work with young children. So I started in a child care center and worked my way up through getting my education degrees and my experience. I've held roles as a teacher in a classroom at an early learning center, directed child care centers, and then began teaching early childhood education at DCC. Our program is designed to allow students to earn 2 different certificates as well as their associate degree in applied science with early childhood. And when you finish the degree, it's designed where you can either go straight into the workforce or it will transfer to some of our public Virginia schools for a 4-year degree with a teaching license for pre-K through grade 3.
Well, thank you. Ryan?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Taube. I'm the Coordinator of Career Competitiveness at the Center for Community Engagement and Career Competitiveness at the CCECC at Averett University. In that role at Averett, I help students basically prepare for their futures. So I help them find internship opportunities, full-time and part-time jobs, and also assist them with resume reviews, cover letter reviews, and graduate school applications. So I really enjoy working with students to help prepare them for their futures. And as part of the CCECC work, we work involving volunteerism, service learning, career development, and internship opportunities.
Thank you. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Toot. I'm the director of the Pittsylvania County Public Libraries. I came to libraries late in life. Started with the county libraries in 2012. I graduated from the University of Virginia with a degree in foreign affairs and spent 10 years with the Central Intelligence Agency working with imagery analysis, and then 18 years with the United States Senate before I moved down to Pittsylvania County. So just shows you can do a lot of things and still end up in libraries. And libraries have been important to me my whole life. My mother was a librarian, so I kind of liked them and knew something about them when I started. And right now, the Pittsylvania County Public Library has 28 staff people, 5 buildings, and a bookmobile that I'm responsible for providing public services, which includes, of course, internet access, books. We have over 100,000 physical volumes in our system and over 1 million digital volumes. So it's a lot of fun.
All right, we'll start. Ryan, we'll start with you, and Lisa kind of already answered the question. Was there somebody that kind of got you into this field? Somebody along the way that kind of pushed you in or got you interested in getting into education?
So both my parents were educators, so I think I had that background from the beginning. And just seeing the impact that my parents had on students. My mom taught K-12, special education, and then my dad taught in higher education for almost 40 years. And so seeing my parents make the impact with students at a variety of levels and ages really drew me to the higher education realm. And before I got into higher education, I taught K-12 special ed. So I've been blessed to be able to work with a lot of different students from a variety of different backgrounds. And I think that's what really drew me to the education field, to be able to work with students and help them find a career that they're passionate about and they really enjoy going to every day.
Great. Traci, same question.
So I've always been drawn to working with young children. That was naturally what I wanted to do when I finished high school. When I was in high school, I knew I wanted a career with children. So there's a lot of different avenues and a lot of different career paths that you can take. And I found my path because when I started with the program at DCC in the early childhood program, and I started working at the child care center there on campus. That became my passion, and I really loved doing that. Along the way, the instructor there kind of became more of a mentor to me more than just a teacher. So I think that speaks a lot about teachers when they become a mentor and they really help the student kind of frame their pathway for their career. So she helped me and guided me through my classes. And as I was deciding on what college degrees I wanted to get, had a lot of discussions with her. And she was, like I said, she was the faculty member and teaching for early childhood. So she helped me get on teaching part-time. So I started teaching part-time at DCC, teaching one class here and there, and really found that I loved that. And I loved teaching the adults how to teach the children. So taking it kind of a step higher and seeing the adults that I was teaching, making that difference for the children too. So I was still able to have that impact on the children and their daily experiences, and making sure that the people that were working with them were doing the same. So I feel like that's where my passion was, and kind of how that brought me to where I am now. I did work with children and families in a different aspect in the community, but then found my way back to DCC as full-time faculty. And I feel like just having that mentor and having that person beside you to kind of hear, and the pros and the cons and help you with the support that you need along the way, that really makes a big difference in framing what you do and how successful you are with your career.
All right. Shep?
So I would say that, so again, similar to what Ryan said earlier, both of my parents actually, teaching is kind of the family business for us. All my parents, grandparents were educators. My great-grandfather was superintendent of schools in Pulaski County. And so I kind of grew up around that. But as I look back, I think throughout my career, there were several educators who were motivational for me. And my fourth grade teacher, Helen Tippie, my eighth grade English teacher, Wendy Wingo, who kind of motivated me to go to college and get an English degree. Randy Howard, my high school chemistry teacher. They were all ones that stood out to me. One of the things that is interesting to me that stands out is that of those three, they were all hard teachers. I think a lot of times, excuse me, I think a lot of times we have a tendency to gravitate toward the teachers that are the easiest and the ones who give us everything we want. But what I found is that when I look back, the teachers who challenged me the most and pushed me to be better than I thought I could be were the ones who were most influential. So I would encourage the students who are out there, you know, that teacher who keeps pushing you, who keeps asking you to do a little more, really embrace that. My dad used to say about coaching, and Mr. Lee, you'll appreciate this. He said, you don't need to worry when the coach is yelling at you. You need to worry when the coach stops talking to you. And so as long as those teachers are keeping on talking to you and pushing you, that means that they see something in you. And so those were the things that kind of motivated me. I got to college, was on an English and a math track. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I started coaching some local teams, and that kind of turned into coaching some high school. And I found that I really liked working with students, and I really liked the classroom as much as I liked the athletic fields, and everything kind of went from there.
All right, thank you. We'll open this up to everybody. Is there one personal trait or one skill that you think would make somebody successful in your particular area that you're working in now? Lisa, we'll start with you.
The ability to organize and communicate. I think in most fields, and it's certainly true in the 3 different career fields that I've been a part of, the ability to analyze and synthesize information and then to put it out clearly in writing or speaking will serve you well in every field. You know, you can be a great engineer, but if you can't tell somebody how to build a building, it doesn't matter. So I think the ability to write clearly, to read and analyze it, that would be the key skill.
All right, Ryan.
I completely agree with Lisa. I think if you're able to communicate clearly and effectively with everyone you meet, that's going to make your job a lot easier. In my role, I work with a lot of different students from a lot of different backgrounds, including international students. And so, making sure that they're able to communicate clearly and concisely, not only on their resume, but in a cover letter for every job that they're going to apply for, and that they're prepared. So when they go into a job interview, they're able to clearly and concisely convey their skills and qualifications relevant to that job that they're applying for is really important. I also think it's really important to be able to be empathetic, not only to your colleagues, but your peers and your supervisors. I think empathy is something that everyone can improve on and strive to do better with. And I think it's really important, especially in the world we live in today.
All right, Shep.
So I would say probably 2 things. The first is the ability to plan. Well, one of the things we talk about in teaching all the time is as students, and even as students when you go into college and study education, you see the performance. What you don't see is the 2 hours of preparation and planning that went into the performance. And that's anywhere, whether you're in whatever job you're in, going back to the engineering example that was used earlier, coaching, teaching, anything. There's a lot of behind the scenes work. And what we get a lot of times with new teachers is we'll get teachers who they really love working with the kids, but they're not necessarily great at putting in the prep work and the planning work it takes to be able to create a quality product and a quality lesson. So the ability to plan and structure your day and your time to be ready to put a good product out there is essential. The other thing is, I think you have to have a passion for wanting to reach students. I think as I was getting ready for this, I was thinking about a teacher we have. She's in her 41st year. She's been doing this for 41 years as a classroom teacher, doing the same subjects. But what I will tell you is every year looks different. Every year she learns something different. Every year she brings a new tool to the toolbox. And the reason is because every year the kids are different, and she knows that. And so she's got a real passion for finding new and creative ways to get the content across and reach the kids where they are. And my experience has been that the teachers who had that passion for wanting to reach the kids where they are and finding ways to do that, if they've got that planning ability and that ability to structure, they're very successful. So those would be the two things that I would say.
All right, Traci?
I mean, I guess I just kind of have to echo all of that, honestly. You know, communication, organization, going into education, I mean, you have to have all of those skills to be able to be effective with your students. But, you know, being in early childhood, I have to go with the passion, you know, so you have to be compassionate and you have to love what you do because you have to go in there with the desire to make a difference. And then, you know, just being compassionate to your students. You know, I teach adults that teach young children. So when my adults don't understand a concept, or when they need help, or if they've had some personal issue going on and it's preventing them from doing their assignments, I have to show them the same compassion that I'm trying to instill in them to show the children. You know, so I have to have a balance there. You know, yes, we have to be organized and we have to hold everybody to their responsibilities, but having that compassion hat on is going to show them what they need to do when working with young children as well. So having that passion for the field and really wanting to make a difference in it. You know, sometimes, you know, you can't just choose a career path or choose a job that you want to do because of the pay or because of the prestige behind it, but you have to have the want to do it, to go and get up every day and make this happen. And like Shep said, planning, you know, to make this happen. You can't just walk into a classroom and have great things happen if you don't have a plan in place for that. And that's where, you know, a real passionate teacher will have a plan for it and is willing to be flexible and make changes when needed to that plan as well.
And the next question is for Shep and Traci. We'll get each of you to take one part. What does it take to be licensed to teach in Virginia? And Shep, I'll get you to take the public school type licensure, and Traci, I know early education has, you know, different levels that you can be trained at. So I'll get Shep to take the, like if you wanted to teach in a public school, and Traci, I'll get you to address the early education. And we'll start with Shep.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about three things real quickly. So we'll talk about the traditional pathway. So the traditional pathway for teaching in Virginia is you have to go to college and you have to get a bachelor's degree. Once you have a bachelor's degree from a four-year institution, then you are eligible for a teaching license. Now, that kind of branches off, and the state of Virginia has provided some flexibility with this. If you go through a teacher preparation program, then you can walk out of college fully licensed. However, one of the things that I want to point out, because as Ms. Tuite pointed out, you know, a lot of people come to different careers later in life, and we really want to put the word out to people that just because you didn't go to college to be a teacher doesn't mean you can't teach. So let's say somebody in the audience right now goes to Virginia Tech and gets a degree in mathematics. And 5 years after college, they decide they want to be a teacher. They can get what's called a provisional license, which means the state of Virginia will allow them to teach for 3 years while they take whatever teacher preparation courses they need to take and pass whatever tests they need to take to get their full license. And so the state of Virginia offers that as a way for people who didn't know from the start that they wanted to be teachers, and we get a lot of those, to get into the teaching field. For those of y'all who are thinking about going other pathways, let's say you don't go to a 4-year college and you go out and you build houses, or you weld, or you do plumbing, something in the career and technical education field, you are eligible to get what's called a tech prep license. You don't need any kind of college degree or any of that to get that. So let's say you go out and work in plumbing for 5 years. You have to work for at least 5 years. And let's say you go work in that and you decide, you know what, I really would like to teach this at a high school level. Then you can apply for what's called a tech prep license. And the state of Virginia they'll ask you to take several college courses, teacher prep courses, but not as many as a standard licensure. And you can be licensed to teach a career and tech education course, and that is a great way. We get a lot of our teachers for career and tech ed through that pathway because we want people who really know what this looks like in the workplace. And have had that experience. So it's a great way to do that. We'll get a lot of people who are later in their career. They've worked in the field for 20, 25 years, and they want to do something different. And that's a good way to get in. So there are a lot of different pathways. So college is one pathway, but there are also other pathways as well.
Thank you. Traci?
So early childhood covers children ages birth through age 8. So as you can imagine, a lot of those children are in childcare centers because they don't start school until they're 4 or 5 years old. So the state of Virginia has taken childcare center operations under the Department of Education division. And there are levels of quality that are given. Right now, it's voluntary for centers to decide that they want to be quality rated and given a level of quality. But in order to have a higher level of quality, your teachers and your staff that work with the children need to have certain levels of education. So, in all truth, if you're 18 years old, you can hop right out of high school and you can go get a job in a childcare center. However, that's probably not going to be a high quality center. And I tell my students, you don't want to put yourself in a place working somewhere where you might have a liability or an accident may happen. And if it's not high quality, thinking about the negative things that could happen to young children and you as a staff member, you as an employee there. So you really want to shoot for working at these childcare centers that are at a higher level of quality and that have that quality standard through the state. And they are the ones that are going to require you to have at least a career studies certificate, which we offer, or that Associate of Applied Science. So places like Head Start, they require their assistants to have an associate degree, and their teachers have to have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education or a related field. So the higher level of quality that that center has is going to determine who they're able to hire with those degrees. So that's what's required for childcare centers. And our degree, like I said, is designed to transfer to some 4-year schools where you can get that teaching license. It's a basic teaching license, but it's for pre-K through grade 3, because that's typically where an 8-year-old, because early childhood, like I said, is 0 to 8, that's where an 8-year-old will be through 3rd grade. So you would need that bachelor's degree with that teaching license if you wanted to teach in the public schools. But like I said, there are assistant positions that will, allow you to apply if you have that associate degree. But be wary of places that will hire you without a degree. You might be putting yourself in a situation that you don't want to be in. And I tell my students that all the time. Having this degree just kind of puts you in a place to where you say, I'm a professional, I have this education behind me, and I'm going to go to a place where I want to teach high quality, and I want to do best practices for young children and give them these quality environments.
Thank you. Next question, I'll give it to Ryan and Lisa. How do you see the evolving technologies that we see changing every day, changing education and training from your perspective over the next 5 to 10 years? Lisa, we'll start with you.
Well, we've seen a lot of changes in libraries that support, for instance, remote learning. So we have students that are using library computers and Wi-Fi to connect to distance learning, which I think is going to continue to be a growing field. And we've been using more technology in libraries, more for access to digital materials, but also for remote programming. And I think that will continue. It certainly exploded during this pandemic. Libraries continue to be an important resource for a lot of people in our community to have access to both the internet, but also for basic small business entrepreneurial kinds of activities, meeting spaces, scanning, printing, all of those kinds of things. So to be in the library field, you have to be adaptable and willing to continuously learn so that you can help the community and also provide those services and keep up.
Ryan?
I think that the 2 years and the 4-year institutions are really going to have to continue to adapt their curriculums to meet these changing needs and evolving and emerging technologies in the next 5 or 10 years. I know at Averett we had to completely shift in March of 2020 to a virtual environment. And so that was definitely a challenge for not only our faculty and staff, but for our students. They were used to that face-to-face instruction, and we had to completely pivot to an all virtual instruction method. And even in the fall, most of our classes were online. And so it definitely, it brought a lot of barriers, not only for our faculty, but for our students that didn't have reliable Wi-Fi access or access to a computer. And so I think that we're just, like Lisa said, the pandemic really exploded the need for accessibility for computers and technology. And I think that continuing in the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to have a lot more reliance on technology and student access. And I think breaking down some of those barriers regarding, Wi-Fi and reliable internet speeds and technology access will continue to be even more important as technology continues to emerge in the education field.
Let all 4 of you answer this. Traci, we'll start with you. What do you find is the most challenging part of your job?
I was just complaining about that this morning. So, the most challenging part is the administrative paperwork part, honestly. When you do something that you love and you go into the classroom and you teach, or we're still doing it online remotely in my program. But I'm able to see all these fun things and all this great stuff that my students are doing day to day. The worst part of it is that you have to do your reports. You have to fill out your assessments, and you have to do all the administrative stuff and the data collection and all that kind of thing. So that's the not fun part about my job. So I think that's really the hardest, is just collecting it and showing what all the good stuff that we're doing in our program on paper. If someone was to come and observe my class, Ryan was saying that in their program, they do these service learning projects and they do all of these volunteer works, and my students participate in those things. They get to go out in the community and make projects for the Science Center and the Art Museum and things like that, which is great fun. And you can see that through pictures or through videos that we take. But then when somebody wants data on it, how do you transform that into a number? So I think the data and the analytical part of it is probably the least fun part of my job.
Right. Yeah.
I would, excuse me, I would say that the most challenging part of my job, and I think really in education, and this kind of goes back to something that Ryan was saying earlier, is trying to keep up with everything, with all the changes that occur on a day-to-day basis. Every year, especially now as technology has become more prevalent, I'm old enough that I graduated from a high school that only had one computer in it when I graduated. And that's probably a foreign concept to everyone who's out in the audience right now. But every year, education is changing. The resources that we have, the demands, the career opportunities that are out there that we need to be knowledgeable about and guide students toward, all of those things are changing annually. And so we have to constantly try to stay up to date and abreast of all the changes that are occurring around us so that we can help guide students toward those. So I will say that that's the most challenging, but it's also the most exciting and enjoyable because it gives us an opportunity to continue to learn. And that would be one piece of advice that I would give to everyone in the audience is no matter what field you choose, whether it's education, engineering, plumbing, whatever it is, continue to learn and grow. Don't rest. Every day, try to learn one new skill, one new fact, something, because eventually you're going to need it. And that will help prepare you for whatever the next step is.
I see we've got a bunch of student questions coming in, so we'll get to those. This first one is from Jordan Edmonds. What is your favorite part about doing this job, and what did you want to do before you worked at this job? Lisa, we'll start with you. I think we know what you did, but.
Well, as I say, the most fun of working in a library is, working in a library. If you like books and you like reading and you like being around people who like books and like reading, then you're going to have a great time every day. When you can connect someone to something that they need or want, a book that they love, a piece of information that's important to them, help them get something done, apply for a job, learn to use the computer. It is a very fulfilling moment. That's the highlight of your day and your week. And to echo what people were saying in the previous one about challenges, every day presents new challenges and new opportunities, and that's also enjoyable. That's something I have enjoyed in each of my careers. Information has been kind of the theme for me in all of mine. Intelligence, you gather it, you disseminate it to policymakers. If you're in the Senate, you are gathering information, developing policy, trying to sell policy. So you're learning and sharing and trying to make things happen. And it is the same in libraries, except that you get to do it on kind of an individual basis. So you're trying to provide information and intelligence and help people as individuals. So lots of fun.
All right, Ryan, same question.
I think the most fun part about my job is helping students find a career that they're passionate about and they really want to go to every day. And so I was actually working with a student the other week, and they got the job that they really wanted. It was like their number one job in terms of on their list. And so they're graduating in May and they already have a job offer. And so just kind of seeing that spark in their eye, and that they had, they had worked so hard, they had applied to a ton of positions, and I kind of helped along the way in terms of building their resume, helping them sharpen their interview skills so that when they went to the interview, they were prepared. When I got into career services, my main goal was to help students find a career they're passionate about. And if I can do that, whether it's through resume review or cover letter review, or just sitting down with them and helping them decide what they want to major in freshman year, sophomore year at Averett. It can be a very daunting task when you're in college and you don't know what you want to do. And so I can help students through that process, whether it's taking a career assessment or just sitting down and talking about what do they like to do, what have they done in the past, and what do they want to do with their future. And I realize that's not an easy task. Sometimes it takes people years to find a career that they're really passionate about. And so, speaking to you guys in the audience, if you don't know what you want to do right now, that's okay. You might graduate college and have a career and choose a major and think that's what you want to do. And then you find out, maybe I don't want to do this for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And that's okay. I think career development and figuring out what you want to do is a lifelong process. So just remember that when you are trying to figure out what you want to do, whether you want to go to a 2-year school, a 4-year school, or just enter the workforce right out of high school. There's a lot of jobs out there for everyone. And so just remember that when you are looking for a career or looking for a job in the future.
All right, thank you. Next question is from Joanna Nyamboga. Do you like being in the education field, and would you recommend it? Traci?
I absolutely love it. I think being in education is something that you really have to have a desire and passion to do. You don't just do it because there's nothing else out there for you to do. You have to, it has to be a conscious decision that this is what I enjoy. I enjoy seeing that light bulb come on when a child or my student is trying to learn a concept, or when something is trying to happen, and just to see them reach that marker or that achievement and that goal that they had. If it was a young child and they're learning to write their name, or if it's my adult students and they're trying to understand how to implement a standard, or whatever it is, just to see that person has achieved it and you had even just a little bit of something to do with that. I think that's really exciting. And the more that the education field can make learning exciting, we do that in our classroom. We have a lot of fun. Yes, we have to learn about brain development. We have to learn about child development and psychology and how the brain works and how we learn things. But then we get to put it into practice. They get to go into the classrooms. Well, pre-COVID era, they would work hands-on with the children. Right now, we're trying to get back to that. But there's a lot of, hands-on activities where we have a lab time and we have materials in the classroom where they can create activities with blocks or with paint, or creating things and doing things with the kids, and that's really the best part of it, is seeing these things happen hands-on in the classroom in the moment. That's the most fun part about education.
All right.
And yes, I would highly recommend it.
Next question is from Kendall Walker. Would you consider your job hard or easy? Shep, we'll start with you.
So I would consider my job challenging. And again, it's every career that you look at is going to have different challenges. So from the standpoint of, do I go out and break a sweat every day? No, that's not the kind of challenge that I deal with every day. However, the process of having to bring several things together, when you're planning, it's not typically linear, and the closer you are to the start of the planning, the less linear it is. So, imagine some of the projects that you work on. When you first start working on it, it's like having a puzzle out on a table. And when you first start, it's 100 different pieces. And your job is to kind of try to bring those pieces together. And obviously, as you get closer to the end, it's a little less work because you got fewer pieces to work with. So when you're doing that foundational planning and that preparation and trying to implement programs and those kinds of things that are required to provide for the education that goes on in the building, there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of pieces that have to be put together, and that can be mentally and emotionally challenging. So it's enjoyable, but yes, it is challenging. It does take quite a bit of time and quite a bit of effort.
Thank you. Ryan, same question.
Yeah, I think I agree with Shep. My job is challenging. Obviously, there's days that it's more challenging than others, depending on the week and depending on the circumstances. Obviously, with COVID, career services had to be shifted from a all in-person, not only with career fairs where we have employers come to meet with our students, but workshop series where we would present to students at Averett and DCC and Piedmont Community College on resume reviews or cover letters, but also pretty much everything that we did. So we had to pivot from all in person to virtual. And so that brought a lot of challenges, not only with figuring out how we were going to market and present to our students on when it was going to be and how it was going to be offered, but also how we were going to connect with employers who are interested in meeting our students. And so instead of meeting with them face to face, they're going to have to meet with them on Handshake, which is a career services platform, or via Zoom. And how do we make sure our students are aware of these opportunities, since I can't go and see them in a classroom environment face to face, or I can't go to the cafeteria and set up a table and talk to them about who I am and what career services is and how I can help students prepare. So I think COVID helped me learn about how to pivot on the fly and really learn on the fly. And it was challenging, but it was also a great learning experience for me, especially as someone that's newer to the higher education field. But I think we were able to make it work, and we were able to meet a lot of needs and a lot of students that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to meet with, just because maybe they didn't live in Danville, maybe they didn't live in Virginia, maybe they were taking classes at Averett and they lived in Maryland, or they lived in Washington, D.C. or Northern Virginia. So while COVID brought a lot of challenges, it also brought a lot of new ideas of how to meet different students where they are, and how to help them become successful, even if they don't live right near Averett. So.
All right. The next question we'll let Lisa and Traci take. It's from Anonymous. What would you say for someone who has potential limits or barriers that want to enter this field? Lisa, you want to go first?
That's a hard one to answer, because barriers and limits are so unique to each individual. I know, for instance, physical disability is not necessarily a limit. I work with another library director in Virginia who's in a wheelchair, and it doesn't slow him down. It is a very visual business, so that can be difficult, but there's technology to overcome some of that. And there are, in fact, big libraries for the visually impaired at the Library of Congress and in each state. So there are niches in the library community for lots of things. It is also, public libraries are typically, it helps to be a fairly extroverted personality because it's a lot of customer service. And so if you are a very introverted person, or have difficulties in interpersonal dealings with people, then maybe public libraries wouldn't be your best choice. But there are archives, there are academic libraries, there are private libraries in lots of businesses law libraries and that kind of stuff. So it's a much more diverse field than most people realize, because most people see school librarians or public librarians, and you don't realize the depth of the field until you get into it. And every public library is a little different. They're all run a little differently. So I think there's a lot of scope in the library field. And I was actually pleasantly surprised when I moved into it and got my master's degree in library and information studies, how portable it was. There are more public libraries in the United States than there are McDonald's. So it is a degree and a work field that you can go anywhere worldwide, but also throughout the United States. So I think if you like the field and you learn more about it, you could find a part of the field that suited you, almost whatever you feel your limitations are or your preferences are, if that answers the question.
Thank you. Traci?
Yeah, Lisa, I think you did answer the question.
Yeah.
And I think that applies, to as far as my aspect with early education and being in higher education as well. Limits and barriers vary so much from each individual person. But whatever those limits and barriers are for you, there's a way to, if it's something that you can't overcome, but you have to adapt, right? And you have to learn to modify and work around it. Coming into higher education, there are assessments and placement tests and things like that where you could see where you fall, even academically. And if you need to take some developmental classes, if your limits are academic and you need some English or some math skills that you need to brush up on and kind of need some extra assistance before moving on to those college level classes, those things are offered. So, you take these assessments and what you need personally, and you're assigned an advisor, and that advisor helps guide you through this, right? So that you know what you're ready for and what you might not be ready for yet. So knowing that about yourself to kind of help you academically, but then working in the field, if you know that you have limits or you have barriers, there are so many different aspects of working with young children or working with their families in the community, because you can't work with a child and not work with their family as well, right? I mean, you have to embrace that as well. But there are so many different avenues out there that you're not, I'm gonna say, limited to working just in the classroom with them. You can be a support person for them. You can be an advocate for them. You can be a case manager for them, or, a family educator. There's so many different things out there that you can do working with children and their families. If you had physical limitations, or if you had, social limitations, things like that, there's a lot of remote work that's being done now. There's a lot of going to their houses and working with them one-on-one as a family, so there's a lot of different things out there. And I think with, maybe an academic assessment and a career assessment, you can kind of find that area where you would really fit. Even thinking about working in a childcare center, if you weren't comfortable being a teacher or a lead teacher in the classroom, there's always need for assistance. There's always need for somebody to be what they might call a floater that goes around and helps. You jump in here and you do what's needed, and you jump in there and you do what's needed. In a childcare center, there's a lot of background work. In any education setting, there's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on. And they need all of those people to do that, whether if it's in the public school system, if it's in a privately owned childcare center, whatever setting it is, there's a lot of different positions that are needed, and every one of them are important and critical to the function of that setting. So really find, what works for you and where you fit and where you're comfortable, even if you have some of those limits and barriers, whatever they might be.
All right, thank you. They're telling me that we don't have time to get to the other questions. So maybe if those questions we didn't get to, maybe if they know what school they're from, Dana or Jesse or somebody can, email you guys and get the students an answer and get it to them that way, because we'd like to answer as many as we could. I want to thank everybody for being on the panel. I know I learned something, and based on Ryan's facial expression at the same time, Lisa taught us something, that there were more libraries than McDonald's in the United States. I did not know that. And Shep, you alluded to something earlier, and if any of my former students, and especially ball players, are on here, I don't know how many times I told them, when I'm getting on you, it's because I believe you can do more. And if I stop getting on you, that's when you need to worry. I have used that many, many times. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with our students. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Audia or Dana. I'm not sure who's coming back. Audia, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee, and thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your knowledge and experience with us today. For our student attendees, we hope you are energized and excited to research opportunities in the education and training career cluster. The Career Choice website is a great place to start. We will be drawing the gift card recipient name in the coming week after we've had a chance to follow up with our teacher and whole class registrations. The gift card recipient will be contacted through their school. You can provide yourself with another opportunity to win a $50 Visa gift card by completing the Career Choice scavenger hunt that is located on the Career Choice website. And the Career Choice survey will be coming soon on March 22nd. Each student completing both activities will be entered into a drawing for their school. Good luck, and we hope you will continue to take opportunities to imagine your potential, connect with employers, and explore your career possibilities. Thank you all.